Aren't these little baby tortoises adorable? They're merely the size of a golf ball. They're nowhere near the size of this apple yet, but they are going to get big. Right now, they're extremely vulnerable, and these protective shells are really not all that protective because they're not even solid bone yet. So stick around, because I've got some interesting things to share with you regarding baby turtles and tortoises. Okay, so these two little beautiful baby radiated tortoises are just two examples of the many baby turtles and tortoises that we're raising here at Garden State Tortoise. So what I really kind of want to do is just go around and show you guys all the wonderful up and coming animals here that will hopefully eventually be breeders and amazing looking adults. So you'll notice right off the bat with these radiated tortoises that if you know what an adult looks like, they're basically mini versions of them. But as I said, the shell's not solid bone yet, and the pattern can absolutely change into adulthood. Don't always think that a brightly colored baby is going to be the most brightly colored adult. Sometimes it goes the other way, and sometimes those really dark colored babies end up being incredible as adults. So we're not sure what these two are going to look like just yet, but let's go into the other room and take a look at the adults. Here we go, standing tall. Get this dust off them so you guys can really see how incredibly colored and marked they are. These are the parents of the babies that you guys just got to see on the other side of the building. One thing you'll notice right off the bat is as I started spraying the tortoises with water, the radiateds and even Mickey, our female Aldabra tortoise, stood tall so that they could take in just about everything that is happening here. This is what both of these species do. We don't really see it with many others, if any, at least in my experience, and these two are really incredible to watch. They do this during a rain, and they do it when we simulate an artificial rain. So let's take a look at these incredible radiated tortoises right here. What's something that you guys might notice right off the bat between baby and adult? You'll see that tall dome or arc to the carapace. But the main difference, really the only difference, is that these shells, they are rock solid bone now. The outer layer of the scutes there that you see, that's keratin. And as the animals grow, those layers start to expand, and that's how the animal grows. But the shell underneath those keratin scutes is solid bone. It is not an exoskeleton though. It's part of the vertebral column. And I'm going to get knocked over by an Aldabra tortoise here, so let me give you some more water. So if baby radiated tortoises are mini versions of what they will eventually become as adults, what's a species that looks very different as a baby and will change once it becomes an adult? Hey buddy. All right, we all know who this is. This is Otis, the eastern box turtle, and so many of you have commented on his coloration, wondering if that intense orange is normal and also the red eyes. Well, let me tell you, it absolutely is, and we've shown you a lot of different videos on box turtles, particularly the eastern box turtle, and the coloration is 100% normal for them. Of course, like any species, some are going to be more colorful than others, and Otis does happen to be a very handsome fellow, but here's what I really want to show you guys. That is a baby eastern box turtle. Look at the difference. Now we don't know if this is a male or female yet, but if it is a male, eventually it will develop those beautiful red irises and a form of bold coloration, whether it's an orange red, a yellow. Sometimes the males even develop whites and blues. And Otis actually has a good amount of white underneath his throat and on the soft parts there by his legs. So why is it that this species is so drab, if you will, as a baby? Well, that's really so that they can evade predation. When they're this young, they spend 90% of their time hidden in leaf litter and even buried into the ground, only coming out, usually when it rains, to eat some invertebrates, and then they go back into hiding. Once they get to be Otis's size, although they are still vulnerable, they're nowhere near as vulnerable as when they're tiny like this, so it's a little bit more okay, if you will, for them to have that bold coloration. And even though it's conspicuous to us, they blend in very very well with their environment. Now, let's take a look at another box turtle species that also looks vastly different as a baby. Okay, here it is. This is the Mexican box turtle. Now this is an adult male. The shell, not so much to speak of as far as markings go, but look at that skin. Now he has those beautiful red irises, which are common across the board in many different types of box turtles, just like Otis. But look at the array of coloration on the skin, head, and neck. You've got blue, you've got orange, you've got yellow, you've even got in between, and he's even got this coloration on his back legs. But what about his offspring? Here we go. You just got to see these guys not too long ago in a video we did with Turtle Survival Alliance. Look at that. Could that be any more different? This animal very well could be a male, and if it is, it will one day develop this kind of amazing coloration that Dad does right here. If it's a female, it will not be as colorful, but it still will look considerably different. So this animal uses that simple, plain, uniform coloration to blend in with its environment, and then once it gets to be as big as Dad, it can be a little bit bolder. Now, some box turtles don't change that much from baby to adult, and the Florida box turtle is a prime example of that. I've got several different age groups here, everything from just a couple weeks of age all the way up to several months of age, some already between 4 and 5 months. This is an adult female, and these are the babies from the exact same group. These turtles were all born right here. And when we hold them up against mom, you can see they have that bright yellow dorsal stripe, very similar face markings, yellow scalation, and those beautiful yellow lines and striations all over the carapace. So that's a really nice example of a box turtle that when it's a baby, basically looks like a mini version of its parents. And here's one, as I was saying before, that's only a couple weeks of age. You can still see that, well, that's a Florida box turtle. Sometimes things get very confusing. I have in front of me right here 3 different subspecies, distinct subspecies, mind you, of Greek tortoise. Over here on the left, that is an adult female Testudo greco-terrestris, known in the hobby as the golden Greek tortoise. The middle one is Testudo greco-cyrenaica, which is the Libyan Greek tortoise. And this little tiny one here on the right, that is the Tunisian tortoise or Tunisian Greek tortoise, Testudo greco-nabulensis. Now what I have in my hand here, although they look incredibly similar, are 2 completely different type of Greek tortoises yet again. This one right here is Testudo greco-ibera, in the hobby known as the Ibera Greek tortoise, and this one right here is a baby golden Greek. So you see how similar they are as babies. They all correspond with the same kind of standard where they have a light colored carapace with darker markings, sometimes black, sometimes chocolate, sometimes tan, really not much else to them. But depending on what subspecies these babies are will determine what they turn into as adults. And I think it's pretty easy to see both the markings, shape, and even size differences between these 3 adult Greek tortoise females. So that's Lakai right there, the Vietnamese black-breasted leaf turtle. You guys have seen in a lot of different videos, and the reason I wanted to show him is because I don't have an adult version of him to show you. He's only a little over a year old, but it doesn't matter because that species barely changes, if at all, between baby and adult. They really are little micro versions of what they become as adults, even though they're only fully grown at 4 to 4.5 inches. So that's a real prime example of a species that doesn't change. Color, markings, pretty much the same across the board from baby to adult. Now, there is a turtle that gets way bigger than Lakai, and he could be eaten in just one chomp. And this species does change between baby and adult. Come on. Look at that. This is not just an angry water brownie. This is a baby alligator snapping turtle. You guys know Chief Brody, our big adult male, all too well. And if you recall, we used to have another male named Chum, who sadly passed away not too long ago. Well, this is his surviving baby, who we have named Hooper. And Hooper, well, look at that. You want to talk about being able to blend in? This animal looks like a piece of debris on the river bottom, or it might look like a piece of driftwood, or it might look like a rock with some fuzzy moss growing on it. And that's how this turtle sits around and ambushes its prey. Remember, they sit at the bottom, open that mouth, and wriggle that little tiny appendage that looks like a worm at the end of the tongue. And then an unsuspecting fish comes swimming by, and then boom, that's it. End of days for the fish. And before you know it, this turtle grows into a massive adult, the largest freshwater turtle species in the United States of America and one of the largest in the world. Need I say more? Quite a difference between this animal and our adult male Chief Brody. So for now, this little angry water brownie will continue to eat his pellets and fish, and one day it will be that big. All right, continuing on with showing you guys some incredible babies. These are Ornate Diamondback terrapins that we are raising here. What's interesting about them is they do change to an extent before they become adults, or by the time they become adults. Now, you guys have seen a lot of Diamondback terrapins on the Garden State Tortoise YouTube channel because Casey and I run the Terrapin Conservation Initiative. So we're showing you adult after adult after adult, and even babies throughout the season, which is, spring, summer, fall. Right now, all those animals are hibernating in their native waters of southern New Jersey. And the Ornate is a cool subspecies to show you, because what changes majorly with them is that keel across the top of the shell there. You see those almost like knobs or raised vertebral scutes that form a keel? Those are really conspicuous when they're young, something you also see in map turtles, which Diamondback terrapins are pretty closely related to. But by the time they become adults, that smooths out, just like a slider shell or a painted turtle shell would appear. But when they're babies, it's really easy to see that. And a lot of people think there's something wrong with them. They're like, oh my gosh, is that pyramiding? Is that this? Is that that? Nope, there's nothing wrong with that. That's how they hatch out, and they keep that for quite some time. It isn't until they get to be older adults that it fully disappears. And that's pretty much across the board with all of the Diamondback terrapin subspecies. But with Malaclemys terrapin macrospilota, which is the Ornate, it's very, very obvious in the youngsters. You can see this yearling right here still has them, and this hatchling that was born this year, well, look at that. Almost like a dorsal fin. Little sharks, right? I'm looking forward to seeing these guys grow up. They're an amazingly beautiful species, and this is how they naturally look. These aren't color morphs. They really have that beautiful skin and bold markings to contrast it. So we'll see how they turn out as time goes on, and you are not going to bite each other. One last fun fact about the Ornate Diamondback terrapin, when you looked at those two, the juvenile has actually already taken on the adult coloration with the black shell, the orange or yellow center on each carapace scute, and that almost patternless skin, whereas the baby still had quite a bit of pattern on it. Something very unique to them. All terrapins do change pretty significantly from baby to adult, but with the Ornate, I find that to be one of the most obvious changes. So depending on the turtle and tortoise species that we're talking about, some of them stay virtually unchanged from baby to adult, while others change drastically. When it comes to the European pond turtle, these guys and girls start off as little tiny brown turtles with very few, if any, markings, but as they start to grow, they develop bold yellow patterns all over the head, legs, and shell. So by the time they become adults, they can be very conspicuous in their markings. This is a baby and one that's only slightly older, so you can see those markings already starting to come out. When it comes to Hamilton's or Indian spotted pond turtle, the exact opposite things happen. They start very conspicuously marked, but as they age, not soon after they get their first growth rings, they start dulling out. So you can see with these two right here that this fresher baby has pretty bright spotting on its carapace, but the one that's only slightly older is already starting to lose them. They do, however, retain the pattern on the head. Now when it comes to Hingeback tortoises, the babies tend to start off very uniform in color, but as they grow, they will usually develop some kind of markings. Now it of course depends on what species we're dealing with, and we do have two different ones here. This is a Bell's Hingeback, and this is a Speaks or Specs Hingeback tortoise, but it's pretty much similar with both species. They start off that almost chocolate brown or yellowish brown, and then when they start to grow, they get some pretty interesting markings that are not unlike the pancake tortoise markings. They also, of course, will develop the hinge on the back of the carapace where they get the name Hingeback Tortoise. So I hope you guys enjoyed spending a day all about baby turtles and tortoises with me, and I hope you learned a little something from them. I can't wait to show you how all of these animals we're raising turn out. But before we go, let me formally introduce to you guys the fly river turtle that we showed you in last Sunday's video, who you, the GSTers, have named Skittle. So that's right, we have Skittle and Scuttle, the fly river turtles. Fingers crossed for breeding success down the road. And there's some blueberries for you, lady. Thanks, guys.